Hello, Ed with Bloomfield Cemetery, making another video. So when Dale and I started working at the cemetery as a result of the big trees falling down on the south fence line, you know, we decided we were going to once the tree was cleaned up, we were going to continue on. As we looked around, it was obvious that the cemetery needed more care. So one of the first things I thought was important to do, that if we're going to be doing this, it would be good to also gather information on who all these folks were. So at the time, the sign for the Bloomfield Cemetery, which also had the directory map posted with it, was laying face down in the mud. So took it home, cut off some of the rotted pieces, and then put in new posts, and then eventually poured a pad around the area where the sign would be. It's the same sign that's there today next to the flagpole. And posted on that sign, there's kind of a one-page description about what we're doing in terms of the restoration. And there's a picture there of Dale and I when we're 5, 6, uh, sharing a root beer in the back in the backyard of my parents' house on Church Street. And anyway, there's a letter next to it that says if people who travel there, if they read that letter, I essentially ask them to please share information about their family, photos, letters, stories, anything and everything. And that, and then of course our phone numbers, email address, the PO box in Valley Ford, and that's worked well. It's gotten us a fair amount of information from people who travel there. Like say a once in a lifetime trip. They're doing family research. They drive all the way to Bloomfield Cemetery hoping to take a picture of their relatives, family plots. And 2003, 2004, along that line, I received I received a phone call from a woman named Carol Mathis, and she had been to the cemetery with her aunt Grace Cole, and she told me about they were looking for a relative of theirs who it was said was buried in the cemetery, but they were unable to find him. So, we chatted a little bit, and she told me about some of the background about their family. They were from Waterford, Connecticut, and how they had found a box in the attic years back that contained all these letters. They're very well preserved, and most of the letters were from Bloomfield. So, um, fascinating. I mean, at the time I was just kind of getting into the idea of gathering stuff, and the idea of having letters from Bloomfield from the 1800s would have been just wonderful. So she was telling me about they were looking for a man by the name of William Lacoste, and I told her I would do some checking with what I had and see if I can find something on him. I couldn't find anything on him. And at the time, doing research on the computer was like in its beginning stages. So, and I really wasn't up to speed on how to find stuff like now. So we corresponded back and forth, and she said, I'm going to send you a book, 2 books that talk about the family and these letters. And that her aunt, Grace Cole, had gone through and read each letter and then typed them out. So, and then put it in a book, put it in 2 books. So one of them was a thick book that talks in general about the Stewart family. That's pretty thick. Stewart family came to Bloomfield, I believe, in 1857. Their Bible says or implies 1859. Charles Stewart came to Bloomfield with half his family from Waterford, Connecticut, with the intent of providing produce for the mines up in the foothills. So he purchased a home in Bloomfield at the top of the hill. So, well, that home is still there. It's up at the top of the hill on the corner. So Charles Stewart, some of this stuff gets a little tricky for me on my memory. Rebecca Hildreth Woodson and her husband George uh, built a home at the top of the hill. The home they built, they would sell in 1857. According to Rebecca Woodson, they sold it in 1857 to Charles Stewart. So Charles Stewart was one of two families. Charles Stewart was married. He was one of two. Henry Hall was the other one who was married, came to Bloomfield. The rest of the early pioneers were single men. So Charles Stewart purchased the home from Rebecca and George Woodson at the top of the hill. So there's a 2-year discrepancy from the Woodson perspective. Rebecca Woodson, she essentially did a sketch in the life, as it was called, and it was kind of like a diary of their travel across the plains, going through the Sierras, coming to Bloomfield, settling, and the people who were in Bloomfield and the people who came just after them. So it's quite detailed, and she seemed to be extremely good with dates. So while she said they sold the home to Charles Stewart in 1857, I kind of go with that. So, so Charles Stewart had 3 of his children with him at the time, and the description in one of these manuscripts kind of breaks down the history of him making the decision to leave Waterford, Connecticut, to come out to California for the sole purpose of doing business in produce. So, so while he was here, obviously that was the beginning of the relationship of Bloomfield and the Stewart family. Now, this particular book was letters that were specific to Charles Stewart's daughter, Emmeline Stewart, and William Lacost, the man that Carol Mathis and Grace Cole were looking for at the cemetery. So as the story develops, William Lacoste was in Bloomfield as obviously a single man, and him and Emmeline were developing a relationship in 1865, and then times were tough. So William Lacoste left to go work in Yuba County, and they would correspond via letters back and forth. So these letters, Emmeline would obviously keep her letters, and then when William Lacoste came back from working away, he had his letters. They were all part of the letters that were found in the attic in Waterford, Connecticut, because at different times people would return home from Bloomfield to Waterford, Connecticut to live for various reasons, and the letters were kept, as it said, kept in a tin box, made it up into the attic. and then were discovered in the 90s, 1990s. Um, so these series of letters from Emmeline and William Lacoste are from 1865. So, and it gives a lot of information about what was happening in the town, different people, events, and they were hoping that I could help them not only with discovering where William Lacoste's burial spot is, but also where he lived. And at the time, yeah, I couldn't help. It was so frustrating because I just didn't have any information on him. And up until a couple of years ago, I still didn't have very much information on him. I didn't know. I could get hints by different events that happened in town as to where William Lacoste may have lived, but I didn't know for sure. And as of today, I still don't know where he's buried at the cemetery. There's no stone marker, no name on a map. He was buried by the brothers at the Mason Lodge, which could easily put him at the northeast corner where there is a spot for the Masons. But there again, there is no marker. And the time frame at which he passed away in April of 1876. So they were married in 65. He went to get wood for, I can assume, he was going to obtain wood for keeping his home warm. He had a wife and two sickly kids, little kids. So he left Bloomfield, heading out Bloomfield Road towards Sebastopol, and he got as far as like Blucher Valley Road, and he was talking with a friend of his that he met on the road, stepped off of his wagon, collapsed with a heart attack. And as Emmeline wrote to her father, that my husband left home cheery and happy, and they brought him back to me dead. So these letters, talk about the struggle in Bloomfield. Hard times, just really, really hard times. And it's enlightening to learn so much about the early days of Bloomfield. And as my history and discovery continued on, it was with the help of some of the deed transfers that occurred down the road, where they refer to, often I see this, they refer to a certain plot of land as the old blank home. And fortunately, one of those deeds referred to the old William Lacoste property or lot. And that lot, to do a visual on it, I'll show two different images here, or spots in particular. Charles Stewart up here, top of the hill. So Bloomfield Road, top of the hill. There's the house. There's the barn he built. And this is his property. It goes all the way up the hill, over and down. And he had fruit trees. Of course, he growing produce there again for miners in the hills. So he had developed this land just amazing. And he had strawberry fields also. So he had just so much produce. And at the time, Charles Stewart Jr. would open the store with Thomas Hall. So it was Stewart and Hall's store. And over on this side here, at the end of, let's see, get this straight, Merchant Street, where Merchant Street comes out today to Valley Ford Road, there's only one home in that section that is right across the road. It's this property right here. So this it's like a 2 acre lot that is sectioned out of what would later be the Gaver property in this section of Bloomfield. So it was the fact that there was a transfer from Gaver to whoever was purchasing it next, and they referred to the William, with the exception of the old William Lacoste property. So that's how that got tied together, and the answer is to where William and Emmeline Lacoste lived. So, 1875, William passes away, buried at the cemetery. Like I said, I don't know where. And shortly thereafter, Emmeline returns back to Waterford, Connecticut to live out the rest of her days. So the letters from William Lacoste that they sent in 1865 before they got married, when he's up in Yuba and she's in Bloomfield, and she's sharing the information with him, he's sharing the information with her, letters get saved. She, after William's passing, she moves back to Waterford, Connecticut with both sets of letters, and that's what was saved in this book. So they wrote a lot, shared a lot of information. It's so helpful, so very helpful. And then the rest of the letters and biography information was kept in this bigger book. Now they did share with me a handful of original Bloomfield letters, with with the envelopes, the actual stationery they used, written in cursive. So beautiful, beautiful letters, and I mean just the things they talked about, remarkable. How well people are doing or not doing, the weather, and how difficult it is, crops, all of that. So the discovery of those letters in the attic in an old tin box, as they say, and then somebody who actually took the time to write out, like here's a sample. When things were written back out, she typed it up, and where it just makes sense. It's really wonderful to read, and in my mind, I guess because I can really relate to the places they talk about and the people they talk about. I can kind of imagine, in the moment. Um, as I went to the post office last night and I did not get a letter from you, I thought I would write you again, for perhaps you did not get time to write. That's from Bloomfield, July the 9th, 1865. Yeah. So, how wonderful things like that. And the fact that when I received these two books, I knew I needed to make more of them. So I had like a dozen of each, both the thin one and the big one made. Just so I handed them out to a few people in town. I hope they enjoyed them, and where they're at now, I don't know, and it doesn't really matter that much. The fact that they're out there is good. Obviously, there's no way I could scan and publish all these on either the YouTube or Facebook site, but they do exist, and every now and then I like to read through them, because as I learn more about history in Bloomfield, some of the specifics they talk about are more relevant to me, and that goes with everything. Rebecca Woodson's Sketch in the Life. There's so many people that she talks about. It kind of glazes over after a while. Like, okay, all these people, but when I go back a couple years later and reread it, there's a lot of relevance, a lot more relevance, I should say, and more clues about what was happening in Bloomfield back in the day. So I'm doing this on Christmas Day, and it just kind of excited me when I was thinking about doing a video. about these letters. And I have tried to reach out to Carol over the last couple years, especially when I found out where William and Emmeline Lacoste lived. And unfortunately, her email contact information um, doesn't work anymore. So anyway, um, that's the story about Charles Stewart. Charles Stewart Jr. When he's the fellow who married the two sisters, divorced one sister, married the other sister a week later. So um, the Stewarts had a pretty fair sized family and a lot of interesting things. But this one is about Emmeline and William Lacoste, and I'll just keep it to that. So anyway, I hope you all had a fine Christmas, and I'll be making another video tomorrow. Thank you.